All right. So for the second half here, this is what I was talking to you guys about in terms of identity theft and fraud, and the whole dumpster diving or people looking over your shoulder. Things have evolved, things have changed, and whatever tactic they're going to use in the future, the only fail-safe way, well, you're not going to prevent all fraud. The only fail-safe way to keep it under control, though, is by monitoring your accounts. So I'm going to show you just this short YouTube thing. This is from the UK, but again, it seems like there's a lot of fraud type stuff that comes out of Eastern Europe. Just happens that way. But anyway, you'll see some of the examples of things that have happened over there, will happen over here, and things you're going to be subject to that you. Again, the only way to get around this is by monitoring your account. Just in case these guys jump in a little too fast, what they're showing here is basically an ATM. They may call it something else, a cash point or a Geldomat in Germany, whatever. It's a same ATM kind of thing. When you put in your ATM code and stuff, number one, you put in your magnetic strip, so they read that. What they do here is they have a fake strip reader, and you'll see the guys selling them at the end. The second part with the really bad music that you'll hear at the end, that's not my stuff. That's just a YouTube clip of people who are actually, selling this stuff. And whatever, it's legal to sell, I guess. But anyway, it can only really be used for fraud. So what they'll do is they'll sell two things. One is what they call a skimmer. It's a little fake face plate that they put in front of the ATM where you insert your card, and it also reads your strip. And it sends that via cell phone or via whatever, that circuit to their cell phone. And then also they'll typically have a pinhole camera. So when you do your keypad, they'll have your pin. So now they got the magnetic data, they've got your pin, and they can remotely start hammering your account within minutes. So it's that bad, that quick. And anyway, it's kind of interesting.
Always going to attract thieves.
Mark Connor and his team believe the gang, including this man, have rigged a secret camera onto a cash machine.
So the guy on his left, his eyes are absolutely everywhere. Well, pickpocketing's gone high-tech with the skimming, or cloning as we call it. It's quite an easy system now for the pickpockets and the other grafters, should I say, to use a camera just to clock the number, high-tech. And once they've got the card, then it'll be cloned.
Suddenly, the suspects are on the move. Two members of the DIP team are positioned at the station exit.
Platform 1, make the move towards the train.
The DIP team head for the platform and get their hands on the suspects just in time. It turns out the cash point has been fitted with a skimmer, a hidden device that acts as a card reader.
And that is the fake front. So inside that, you've got all the details, all the coordinates to read people's card details and take their numbers. As you put your card in, all your details are read by them chips there.
And there's also a secret camera.
If you look there, it's a pinhole camera. That films people putting their PIN numbers in.
Skimmers allow criminals to harvest all the data required to clone bank cards and clean out the customer's bank accounts.
People are quite surprised when they look at a machine like that, unaware of what's been on it, and then as soon as they see something come off like this, they sort of start to panic and they think they may have used the machine themselves.
The two suspects are arrested .
move right on and get something else. Let me see what else they got. Oh, this is interesting. Just to show you one other bit of fraud. This is in Spain where they're doing this. You see the big tour buses going around, with people, especially here in Alaska. So watch.
This is Miguelon, whose name means Big Miguel.
He's the key to the most.
So they've got Miguelon there, Big Miguel, and I'm gonna hit the audio up. I mean, these guys are ingenious. They're always thinking of different things to do.
Ingenious theft scam ever.
Take it away, Miguelon.
The man in a bag scam involves a small person or a contortionist who is able to climb inside a tourist travel bag.
This coach is packed, full of tourists and all their valuables, which are safely in the hold.
Or so they think. Miguelon's out the bag, surrounded by tourist treasure, and his pilfering hands are hard at work.
He's back in the bag, and no one even knew he was there.
But this isn't
So anyway,
camera onto a cash machine.
fraud is going to exist. There's no way you're going to get around it 100%. It's always going to be out there. So, short of checking your account fairly frequently. Okay, so this is where we left off. We were just talking about the 3 different credit bureaus. I'll show you how to access that in a bit. Okay. So the only other slide, we were pretty much at the end there. They were just going to talk to you about again, TransUnion, Experian, and the third one. All right. So credit cards. Again, a little repetition here. They were talking general credit on the last chapter. Here they're just talking about credit cards. And it's the same sort of things that go on. If you're one of these people that's down to just making the minimum payments, you got a problem. If you're financing, if you're using long-term credit to finance short-term needs, that's not a good thing. If you're financing your daily living expenses with the hope that sometime, you're going to fall upon some money, that's probably not a strategy that's going to work for you. How a loan grows over time, just because of the interest. So 1.5 interest per month. So, it's 18%, which is not really out of the realm of normal. So, again, when you're looking at buying something, you're not going to pay it off. You're not really paying $2,000 for that thing. You're paying, $2,300 and something for that item. What they're going to look at, and they're going to look at that credit score. They're not going to dig too much through the report itself, probably. They're going to expect any negative information is going to be reflected in that credit score. So they can generally get back to you pretty quick with the report and an interest rate. Again, the interest rate and the available credit are up to them. So not everybody gets the same deal. Income, they'll definitely ask you about that. Current economic conditions. I don't know. It seems like those credit card requests come all the time, but they will definitely ask you, what your earning capacity is. So you can be somebody with quite a bit of money in the bank, but if you don't have an income stream that they could perhaps attach, they may not be interested in it. So MasterCard, Visa, kind of the same sort of thing. American Express is really kind of the odd one. Number one, I don't care for it because it's not accepted everywhere, and because they also charge a higher rate. But you'll find though that you may go to work for a company, and a lot of times companies seem to go with these obscure, American Express, Diners Club, or something like that for their travel. Otherwise, I would really see no reason to have it. The proprietary cards, it depends on your shopping habits. For the most part, I don't have any reason to have any of those. But if you're somebody who shops at a particular store and say you're going to shop at Kohl's or something like that, unless you're using their store card, you're not going to get a good deal. So if you're driven to that and you don't mind carrying around, a whole stack of cards, and there's probably nothing really wrong with it, but it's just not my habit pattern. And unless you're saving money doing it, I would probably avoid it. Credit limit. So again, overdraft protection. So overdraft protection, there's two ways this can go. If it's like a Visa card, it's attached to your bank account, you overdraft your checking account, it goes on there. Or sometimes, if you've got a $5,000 limit on your credit card and you do a bunch of little purchases and it ends up going over $5,000, sometimes they'll allow you to exceed it. Sometimes they'll just say declined, and it's a bit embarrassing, but it means you hit the limit. Annual fee, if you're paying an annual fee, you probably shouldn't be, unless there's huge perks associated with it. But again, the whole status kind of cards that have these annual fees, that what you're really advertising is that you're somebody who's willing to pay an annual fee, not that you're, a better person. So anyway, I don't do it. Incentives. Now we're all kind of suckers for this though, in terms of the, now they're talking just prestige cards. I'm talking more benefits. I mean, there's a number of cards, you have to be careful with some of these cards when they say, oh, we'll give you 30,000 free miles. Well, 30,000 free Delta miles is not nearly as valuable as 30,000 Alaskan miles. I mean, all the airlines have their different mileage schemes. But I did sign up for a Hilton card one time, and it gave me 30,000 miles, which got me about 20,000 miles worth of distance. But, it worked and got rid of the card. But it was just a come-on kind of deal. Other cards, though, that give cash back, and you have to see what works in your system. I'm not saying the miles thing is always the best, but it does seem to be kind of popular with most people. Again, it's just like kind of this bank thing. Look at what the competition's offering you, and don't be so tied to a card that you can't, switch if there's a better deal someplace else. Grace period. So the grace period is what you want to, take advantage of to the max extent possible. So generally, you pay the bill within the billing cycle, get it in there before the due date. On current purchases, there's no interest charge. So that's what you're shooting for. If you exceed that or you don't pay the bill the whole way, then you got problems starting. And the types of interest rates charged, they can kind of do what they want. They're in states that don't have usury laws, so the rates are going to be higher. And if you start getting behind, there's going to be fees, there's going to be rates, and there's going to be, all sorts of money in it for the credit cards. But again, cash advances, they are not an ATM card. There is no grace period. Now they can change the rules. They can, they can have some special deal or something, but typically cash advances are charged a convenience fee up front, somewhere around $10 typically, and then they're charged interest from that day forward. In the same, those goofy checks they send you in the mail are the same as taking a cash advance. So there's probably better ways to do that if you need cash. Not a big fan of money, but you can look at what's coming to you in the mail, what your friends have got, and what's the best deal. Finance charge. So these are just some of the things that are going to be on there in terms of the sort of the fine print once you get beyond the glossy pages. So all this stuff applies. You know, for my card, I couldn't even tell you what interest rate I'm paying on my Alaska Airlines card because I don't carry a balance. It doesn't matter to me, so I don't do it. And if they have, you know, all I know is if I pay that off within the cycle, I don't pay those charges. So I do know that their interest rate is a bit higher than some of the other cards. So if you're doing it for the miles, but you're carrying a balance, you'll probably be better off buying tickets and you know, for cash and not using the miles. So again, you got to look at your own habits, but that's what depends. Typically, it's based on the average daily balance method. But again, these should not be a big worry to you if you're just a convenience user. APR is what we deal with, and APR is what, you know, the financial, the documents, the glossy, you know, once you get beyond those pages, they're going to have in bold letters what the APR of that credit card is, and that's what you're kind of looking for. You're looking for that, you know, the textual data that's absent of some of the marketing stuff, because they do have to tell you up front what the calculation method is and what the different fees are for different scenarios, late payments, and the rest of it. Obviously, the more interest, you know, the higher interest rate, the bigger your payments. But again, you know, the criteria when you're selecting a credit card, if you're, you know, going into get a new credit card and you're shopping for interest rates to get the lowest interest rate, I don't think you should be using a credit card that much then. If you plan on carrying a balance, that is just not a good idea. They're showing the, you know, time value of money, the way interest rates are calculated. And again, you're not going to find those interest rates down at the lower end of the scale. Most credit card rates are in the double digits if you're going to carry a balance. So previous balances, purchases, cash advances, payments, finance charge. So to tell you the truth, when I get a credit card statement, I mean, I can check it in a second. You know, I mean, I will look at the transactions just to make sure that everything looks legitimate. But my main thing is I'm looking at the finance charge. As long as that's all zeros, I know, you know, things are good. The balance got there, the money got there on time. I'm not dealing with a minimum payment because I pay it off. You know, the new balance, the previous balance, I'm not so worried about that. I just want to make sure all the merchants are, and the amounts are what I agree with, and the finance charge is all zeros. And then we're fine. But pay the correct charges in a timely manner. Yeah, if they are correct charges, but the minute you notice there's a problem there, they will typically, well, in every case I've ever had, they suspend those charges, and then it generates a bit of paper, you know, and then there's something that comes in, you know, 60 days later, 30 days later, whatever. They say, yeah, okay, we agreed this was, you know, a disputed charge, a bogus charge, and we'll eliminate it from the bill. But they'll take it off the bill right then. And if they find there's a, you know, or you have a, oh yeah, you know, somebody else, my whatever, friend, whoever, used that card, or I just realized the merchant, and you'll get to know, if you review your bill on a fairly, you know, frequent basis, you'll get to know the different, basically, acronyms or whatever that your merchants use, because it's not always going to be transparent. Some merchants are really good about it. You know, it'll say like Lowe's or whatever. Other ones will say, you know, XL something. It makes sense to the merchant, but it makes it difficult for you. But if you shop at the same stores, you'll get to realize, oh yeah, I know that's that gas station over wherever. It'll be fine. Customer service number, dispute. Yep, that's always going to be on there. Now, so when you look at a credit card bill, though, and typically when I catch most of the charges, they'll still say pending next to them, which is a good thing. It means they haven't even paid them off yet. So they are more than happy to deal with you and get that thing wiped off. The other thing, too, is a lot of credit card companies, like Visa, I don't want them to do it because I don't want to burn up all my data on my cell phone, but they actually want to track my credit card and have it linked to my cell phone, figuring that I'm always going to have my cell phone where I'm using the credit card. And if they notice a discrepancy between where the card's being used and where my cell phone is, I mean, maybe they'll insist upon that at some point, but right now I'm kind of stiff-arming that because I don't want my, tracking services on all the time. But that would be one way of doing it. Now, if you do have kind of erratic travel, you'll notice that, you go in someplace and all of a sudden your credit card doesn't work, and that's because they have sensed, some sort of fraud. So I went to Hawaii and I didn't tell them, and sure enough, they shut it down. Or I was driving up from Texas to Montana over the course of just a day or two, and they thought that was a little excessive, and they shut it down. But again, I get a text message, did you authorize this? Yes, I did. Boom, they unlock the card, and it works again. So it's pretty quick. And you can always tell them ahead of time if you don't want to get screwed and stuck somewhere. You can say, I'm going to be doing some traveling, expect these countries or this activity, and they very much appreciate that. And again, they act like they're, looking out for you, but it's a win-win for both of y'all. Credit Card Act, I'm not going to go through all these. I mean, if you look at the data that's on that final page, the black and white page of the credit card advertisement, it's going to have all these different things in it. And it's going to tell you exactly what the numbers are. And it's far easier to find. And plus, if there's some, if it's zero interest, they will have to delineate how long that zero interest is going to be. Plus, there's things, too. They can't go, well, it's zero interest for the first month or something. Any of those offers like that have to extend out a certain length of time. Card holders, restrictions less than 21. Anyway, it's every year there's a little few more additions. Again, reduce credit limit when the economy. Anyway, some of these things are kind of tough to do after the fact. Avoid credit repair services. Again, the clickbait.com ones that are there, those people are probably not there to help you. But if you get a hold of the credit card company themselves, they probably will be eager to help you. More tips. Again, pay yourself first, live within your means, and everything's fine. If you do get excessive credit, just admit to it early on and start getting your life back in order. And again, you have to think when you're starting to build up payments on installments, it's going to make it really tough to dig yourself out of a hole. So if you are a little smarter about it, you won't have these problems. Personal bankruptcy. So 7 and 13. Again, 7 is, people think, oh, bankruptcy is a great thing. It just wipes out all my debts. Not really. What it does is it basically, you go to the judge and you say, yeah, I'm financially irresponsible. And I'm turning over that responsibility to you. And I come to you with a list of my assets. And if it's, 7 or 13, the judge can go down through there and go, yeah, you don't need that. You can keep that because it'll get you to work and stuff. But if you think that I get to keep all this stuff, now you've given up that ability to decide, what is essential to you. So what they're going to do is this discharge the debts. They're going to essentially write off some of those debts, but some of the debts that you really want to write off, they're not eligible for, like student loans or alimony or obviously child support. That stuff's not going to go away. So you're going to trash your credit rating. You're not going to get away from all your debts, and now you're going to have this, thing hanging over your head. And you've kind of submitted yourself to the judge, and he gets to kind of tell you what to do. And it may be this chapter 13 where they say, okay, you don't just get to walk away. You've got the means to repay this, and this is going to be the plan for you to repay it. This 3 to 5 year repayment plan. You're going to make these people whole, and we're going to kind of step in and maybe not take everything from you, because under Chapter 7, they're going to take your stuff, basically, that which is not essential. 13, that's kind of the wage earner plan or the working plan where you get to keep more of your stuff, but you have to abide by the plan. Again, start small, live within your means. And again, there's a lot of opportunities where credit is advantageous, but if you're smart with it, that's a whole different thing. I'm not necessarily racing through this, but this is, some bit of fluff. What I want you to do, though, and that's why I wanted to leave a little bit of time here at the end, is this business about the credit report. So back on these slides, buried in here, was this FTC.gov slide. And I'll show you just the first little bit about how to get to it. Okay, so obviously a .gov site is going to be, a government site. This is where, you could go, but again, it's a federal agency. It's not necessarily, going to be that whatever things have gone horribly wrong. That months, years mean nothing to these folks. But one thing they do have on this site is getting your free credit report. So there's going to be a link here. It's going to tell me, yeah, you're leaving, the FTC site. Right. And it's going to direct you to a .com site. But again, you got there through these folks. And then here's the three guys. These are the sponsors of the site, the three credit unions, so TransUnion, Equifax, Experian. Request your credit report. Again, you're going to get this and you're just going to look at it. In fact, you don't need to print it. You don't need to do any of that stuff because you've got enough information on here. If Identity Thief came across this, he would be all set. So, request your credit report. And then I got to start dumping in all kinds of personal information, which I'm going to limit it to that. But what's going to happen here is now they're going to come back and they're going to want to validate that it's you, right? Because this information is, Social Security might be tough to get. But anyway, they're still going to give you some questions. And that's why one of the reasons I don't make this a homework assignment is because sometimes you can't even get beyond these questions because you're going, I don't know, or I don't recall, or the information. We'll see how you do. But for me, I just know that they drag up obscure addresses that aren't even mine. But anyway, you get into it. Yes?
If you can't do it online, can you go to your, like say, whatever you were just talking about, where the questions were too hard or whatever, you go to your bank and figure something out to check your credit?
You could, and, but again, I'm not trying to get you in a position where you got to pay for it.
Oh, I just meant just checking your credit.
Yeah. And a lot of times too, like what I've noticed is, I've seen an offered by my bank and I've seen it offered by the credit card where, check your credit score here. And again, they're not one and the same. And these guys are not going to, through this service right here, they get no money out of this. They're doing this because the government's forcing them to do it, basically. So they're not going to give you any more than what they're mandated by law. And they consider that credit score, a proprietary item that they can sell. So that's not going to be on here. But if you had access to your credit score and your credit score is a fairly high number, I would be pretty confident that there's probably not much identity theft going on. But again, I'd still want to see the report, because the report has just got, sometimes I think mine's like 15, 18, 20 some pages, depending on which one I go to. And I'm just looking for no negative information, making sure, everything is closed that I'm not using, and the rest is kind of history. But if somebody's getting into your account, or you've got these open accounts that you forgot about that you're not using, that's where you need to write down the information from the credit report and contact those people and get that account closed, because that's an open liability. Because again, the key to keeping your identity from being ripped off is by checking your accounts. And if you've got accounts that you don't even know you got, man, you're a grape. You are ripe. They could do that. And on my case, I had a bogus savings account, which I didn't even want the savings account, and it was 20-some years old. And somehow it got overdraft tied to it, which meant that I knew I had virtually no money in that savings account, but it was tied to a credit card, and they just started putting the overdrafts on the credit card. So, yeah. But you can get some of this information, but again, I think it's not a skill, but I think you'll figure it out. And again, you've got three different companies to deal with too, and they'll ask you which one do you want it from. So, 3 months later, pick the next one. So it's pretty straightforward, but it's worth seeing and it's worth looking at. Anything else? All right then. Good deal.
Don't always trust the credit card companies to give you the best advice.
Oh, I'm sorry. What happened?
I had come into some money about 10 years ago and wanted to pay off some credit cards. So I called the company and said, well, I want to pay off this $5,000 credit card. And they're like, oh, well, we can settle for you for $2,500. And I'm like, great, let's pay that off. And next thing I know, in my credit report, it's a settled for less than full value, and it's not a bankruptcy, but
Yeah. It looks like you did what a collection agency, like they couldn't recover the money, so they sell it for less. Yeah, the same thing. I mean, there's some pitfalls. You got to know some things. Like the example I'll keep using is when you get money in a 401k and you're quitting jobs and you call up the thing, go, I'm quitting, so I just want to close out that account. Okay, sir. If they just freaking close out that account without doing a rollover, it's irreversible, and you just incurred a 10% penalty plus a huge tax liability. So, yeah, you have to know a little about this stuff, and I can't believe they would do that, though. Why the? Yeah.
It was 4 of them, and so on my credit report for quite a while.
Yeah. And it takes 7 years or so to get stuff like that, negative information.
But on the other hand, when I pulled my credit report, there was a woman in the same town that had the same name I did that was overdue on her child support and had a lien on her for her child support. So I wrote a letter to the credit company, and they had it cleaned up within 2 months.
And even if it's negative information, I don't know, but you do have the ability on the bottom of your credit report to put in your own statement. That's not the same as getting resolved, but at least you can say, look, I had a death or seriously ill spouse. I got in financial trouble. I'm all better now. I mean, I don't know whether they're going to give you any credit for that, but you do have the ability to put something in there in your own words. But the best thing is to get it squared away or not let it happen in the first place. All righty then. We will see you next week.